There's an individual that is on the side of the road. He said he heard an explosion in his truck and he's bleeding from his back.
An auto explosion rocks the peaceful town of Dothan, Alabama.
I was very surprised that he survived this.
I said something happened, something like blew up.
Evidence of foul play leads police into a bombing investigation.
There was a hole in that back floorboard, and the metal was kind of floured out underneath.
As I glanced down behind the seat, I saw what appeared to be wires.
I said, do y'all think like somebody done something on purpose? He's like, yeah, that's what it's looking like.
When detectives trace the bomb to its source, they find a spurned lover willing to do anything to get their revenge.
This case was about manipulation, selfishness, and pure evil.
She knows where the buttons are to push.
He tells her, you know, I'm willing to do a lot for the people I care about.
This was a bizarre case, bizarre facts and bizarre circumstances and bizarre motivation.
She played men to get what she wanted. She almost succeeded this time.
And police must rush to apprehend a killer before they strike again.
I've got a note inside my vehicle that says, "You're next," boom.
It's Monday, October 23rd, 2017, in Dothan, Alabama. For mechanic Danny Brooks, the workday begins like any other.
My girlfriend, Christina, had already gotten up and gotten ready. And I kind of finished getting everything situated and headed outside. At the time, I had a company truck. I had to go pick up a couple guys and a couple pieces of equipment to do a welding job for the day. It's probably about a 15 to 20 minute ride from where I was living at the time.
But Danny's morning commute suddenly takes a frightening turn.
There was a car that was headed south passing me, and it seemed like a split second after it passed me, there was this loud explosion. I had definitely had ringing in my ears. I just completely disoriented. The only thing I remember is I can smell burnt lighter fluid. I tried to open the door and I couldn't get it to push open, and that's kind of when I realized that the windows were gone.
Still in shock and trapped in the car, Danny flags down a passing motorist for help.
I said something happened. I said something like blew up. He was able to open the door from the outside. When I stood up and got out of the truck, I could see blood in the seat, and I reached back and there was blood on my hand, and I'm like, damn, am I hurt? And the guy's like, yeah, man, you got blood all over your back.
The Good Samaritan immediately calls 911.
What's going on there, sir? There's an individual that is on the side of the road. He said he heard an explosion in his truck and he's bleeding from his back. He's bleeding pretty bad.
It was like excruciating pain in mainly my left side and hip area, and some on my back.
As paramedics begin to assess Danny's injuries, investigators arrive on scene.
As soon as I stepped out of the vehicle to go make contact with them, the first thing I noticed was there was a large amount of glass on the roadway. As I approached the vehicle, I could see there was a hole on the driver's seat. As I glanced down behind the seat, I automatically saw what appeared to be wires and an electronic board of some sort in the floorboard. I immediately became worried that that was a bomb. The first thing is to make sure the scene is safe. Make sure there's no secondary devices. I immediately shut the scene down, had patrol close the road, and we all backed away and I notified dispatch to call the bomb squad.
As bomb technicians arrive to secure the scene, Danny is rushed to a nearby hospital. And law enforcement is left wondering if the danger is over and why Danny was specifically targeted.
And is there going to be more? Is this a single event? You didn't know at that point. So, of course, it's going to cause a little bit of panic until you find out who's responsible for it.
A car bombing is something no one in the small town of Dothan had ever seen before, including lifelong resident Danny Brooks.
I was born right here in Dothan, Alabama, in September of 1974. My mother worked in the grocery business for years. My father worked with the city of Phoenix City for their Parks and Recreation Department for several years before he retired.
After graduating from high school, Danny found employment as a mechanic and married a woman named Casey Shaw. In 1998, the couple had a daughter together.
We were nervous about everything like new parents are, like every little noise and whatnot, but by the time she got up to around 16 to 18 months old, we started noticing that she was kind of lagging in some things, especially not trying to speak or talk.
When Danny and Casey learned that their daughter had special needs, they took it in stride. 4 years passed, and Casey became pregnant with their son, Zachary.
My dad was a very good father. He was stern when he needed to be. He was playful when he wanted to be. He always tried to make sure that everyone was tended to. Just generally was a good person as a kid, as a father especially.
Danny made sure his children thrived, but his marriage suffered. In 2004, he and Casey divorced.
My mother gave my father majority custody. I know that we did go back and forth fairly regularly. That was actually how she had her accident when she passed away.
Thanksgiving Day of 2005, the kids and I were at my aunt's house. Casey called and was going to come pick up the kids, and she had not shown up. I couldn't really wait around any longer, and when we left going home, we actually came up on the accident. She was involved in a very bad car wreck, and she died at the scene.
My father, he really had this card stacked against him. He just lost his wife and had a special needs daughter and then a 2-year-old son. But he handled it extremely well. He almost made it look easy.
Danny managed his grief by devoting himself to his children. When Zachary was in 1st grade, he joined the Cub Scouts, and Danny volunteered to be den master. In 2013, it led to an unexpected love connection with one of the other parents, Ashley Nicole Haydt.
She just moved to the area, didn't really know anybody, and her oldest son, and I want to say her middle son, were both in Cub Scouts in the same pack that we were.
She was always kind of sweet and had just kind of a generally positive attitude, and it was an attractive thing.
They realized they liked each other, I guess, and then that's when they started dating.
Ashley was a lot of fun to hang around. It just kind of seemed like a natural fit. From what she told me, kind of had just a typical childhood. She grew up in Pennsylvania. Her dad had remarried. Her mother lived in this area, so she decided to move down here to try to have more relationship with that part of her family. I wasn't really like rushing toward wanting to be married. She was good with that arrangement for a long time, and then I guess she kind of started pushing and wanting more. That's what she needed to be happy in life, was to be married.
By 2016, Danny and Ashley were unable to see eye to eye and ended their 3-year relationship. But soon after, Ashley realized she was pregnant. When their son Lincoln was born the following year, Ashley wanted majority custody.
I'm not an every other weekend kind of dad. I'm a full-time dad. I said, we'll get along as best we can, raise Lincoln. I said, but I'm done. I don't want anything else to do with you as far as being together.
Due to disagreements on custody of their son, Ashley and Danny turned to lawyers to settle the matter. Between 2016 and 2017, Danny turned his focus to work and a new relationship.
I met Danny working at Michelin. I was contracted out with a cleaning crew, and he was contracted out with a electrical engineering kind of thing. We said we were going to take it slow because he had just recently come out of a relationship. I was running from one.
At the time that my father met Christina, he really wasn't looking for a relationship, but she was a very good person, and she made my father very, very happy. It was a little while after him and Ashley separated. They got together. They had only been dating for about a month before the bombing.
Now, an explosion has Danny fighting for his life in the emergency room. Meanwhile, the bomb squad is able to ascertain that there are no additional explosive devices in the vehicle.
Out in the grass and in the roadway, they found what appeared to be several pieces, fragments of galvanized metal. They collected those because these types of pipes will commonly be used to build explosive devices.
We knew at that point that it was going to be a device that was set off, but we did not know if it was a timer, if it was somebody activated it somehow. At that point, we had no clue.
The main point of focus would be trying to figure out who would want Danny dead enough to put an explosive device in his truck.
Coming up, detectives zero in on a possible suspect.
She provided law enforcement with text messages between her and her estranged husband.
And the investigation takes a surprising turn.
He said, I done it. I planted that in Danny's truck.
October 23rd, 2017. Danny Brooks has just survived a would-be deadly car explosion in Dothan, Alabama. After determining that Danny was likely injured by a pipe bomb, Dothan police call in the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives for assistance.
On his back, left side, he had a gash. It was a bad injury.
It was very, very damaging. He had to go to surgery for it to get shrapnel removed out of it.
They gave me some morphine, and it started kind of easing everything off.
It's not every day where you have a remote detonated device that goes off in Dothan, Alabama. So this was a case where it was all hands on deck.
I said, do y'all think somebody done something on purpose? He's like, yeah, that's what it's looking like. He said, it looks like somebody put a device in your truck. And I'm like, it just was a very shocking thing to hear. They had asked, did I have anybody in mind that might want to hurt me? And I said, no.
He said, the only thing I can think of that I have going on in my life at this point is I'm in the middle of a custody battle with my ex-girlfriend over our child.
He says, her name is Ashley Haydt.
But I told him that I didn't think she would be involved with something like that.
Even though he said, I don't believe she'd have anything to do with this. You know, him and her being in a relationship. So I prioritized talking with her.
The day after the bombing, an ATF agent went out to Ashley's place of employment to talk to her about what happened.
She was asked about the relationship and how things were between she and Danny Brooks.
How long were y'all dating? Prior?
3 years, this October would have been 4 years.
Ashley says she's been busy caring for her 5 children and hasn't seen or talked to Danny in months for legal reasons.
It's like a court battle, like he has an attorney, I have an attorney. So the attorneys are handling everything.
Mm-hmm. Ashley did not give any indication that the relationship was necessarily any more sour than a typical relationship where two people who are not together and are fighting over the custody of a child.
Ashley's alibi is also easily verified. She was at work the morning of the bombing.
She basically said she had no idea who could have been involved in the bombing.
The only thing that I can think that we'll probably do prior to leaving here, you giving us consent to download the contents of your phone?
Yeah, I mean, I guess whatever I have to do.
So the sheriff's office hooks Ashley's cell phone up to his computer and does a download and extraction of the data from her cell phone.
The search yields nothing out of the ordinary. Looking for additional suspects, investigators return to the hospital and turn their attention to Danny's other associates.
We're also wanting to find out, well, who do you associate with? Is there a coworker that's upset with you? And he tells us about this relationship he's in with Christina.
I was at work and I had missed a phone call from him. And so whenever I saw it, I called him back.
Investigators find Danny's girlfriend, Christina, waiting for news of his condition.
I did not know how to feel at that time. Was busy trying to wrap my head around what was going on. I didn't have time to process it.
We end up talking to Christina to ask her about her husband. She was technically still married. The divorce had not been finalized because her husband would not sign the divorce papers.
She told us she'd been in an abusive relationship and said that her ex was not happy because she was in this relationship with somebody else.
Christina provided law enforcement with text messages between her and her estranged husband.
It gave us a reasonable suspicion at that time to think that he needs to be looked at really hard.
We were able to obtain a search warrant for his residence in Sampson, Alabama. Christina's husband provided a cell phone to us, and we were able to determine and verify that his cell phone was not in the area of the bombing at the time of the bombing or the night before. We found nothing in his house. His house was clean as a whistle.
All his stories checked out, and he was cleared as a suspect fairly early on as well.
With no evidence pointing to the involvement of their two best suspects, investigators consider the physical evidence for new leads. The pieces recovered from the truck make them think whoever built the device knew what they were doing.
When we recovered the bullets or projectiles from the vehicle, it was clear there weren't as many projectiles to come off of that device as possible.
Ultimately, they were left with, what do we know about this device? What do we know about the components that we found? And how can we use those to identify who purchased these items and built this device?
Who is trying to get rid of Danny? Who's trying to hurt Danny?
24 hours into the investigation of the bombing of Danny Brooks' truck, detectives believe their best chance of finding the bomber is to trace the components used to make the bomb.
Certified explosive specialists started finding a number of components. The 12-volt battery, that would be for like motorcycles. There were projectiles, so like bullets.
Black powder was found in the area where we found the device. With the wires, it was determined that it was ignited by a remote.
This type of high projectile device could have only one objective: killing anyone nearby.
An electric device sends a spark. It ignites the black powder, which then combusts and causes the explosion. And then the shrapnel, which in this case was the bullets, gets exploded away.
Clearly, somebody tried to kill him by blowing him up. I was very surprised that Danny Brooks survived this, and he's very fortunate that he did.
Most of the parts are fairly common, but ATF agents recognize the wiring used in the device.
There's one set of the wires that appeared to be hobby rocket motors. The ATF sees this a good bit. One of the places that sells these is Hobby Lobby, the craft store.
We immediately sent investigators out to Hobby Lobby to see in recent days if any of these items had been purchased.
As they scan through security footage of recent purchases, one customer bought the exact kind of motor.
You could tell approximate height, weight. He was a Caucasian male. He was wearing a black hat. He was wearing glasses. He was dressed in a mechanic shirt.
He makes the mistake of paying with a credit card.
That had no information on it other than a number. So at that point, we then had to subpoena the bank to obtain that information.
While the bank processes their request, detectives pay Danny another visit at the hospital to see if he recognizes the man.
I really don't recognize him. I'm sorry. That could be 10 different people I know or nobody. They, assured me that, look, when you do leave, you're going to have security with you. Obviously, somebody's tried to hurt you. We don't want them to try to come back and finish the job.
The week after the bombing was, for me, it was the worst week of my entire life. I was nervous all the time. It was awful.
3 days after the bombing, the ATF's lead investigator is contacted by the local sheriff, who has an unexpected lead.
He tells me that he received a telephone call from an attorney in town who told him he had a client with him that had information that we would be interested in regarding the bombing.
So we went to the attorney's office, and when we got there with the attorney was Ashley Haydt.
At this point, she tells them that she does know something about the bombing and that it was one of her coworkers who did it, and she knew that because her coworker had told her.
He said, I done it, and I said, you did what? And he's like, I planted that in Danny's truck.
She told them that it was a gentleman that she worked with. His name was Silvio King.
When Ashley sees the pictures taken at Hobby Lobby, she confirms the identification. Ashley says she and Silvio had become friends. And during breaks, she'd told him about the problems she'd been having with Danny regarding their custody dispute.
Not paying child support.
Yeah, not helping out with anything.
Undoubtedly, he must have some kind of feelings for you. Have you and him ever had any sexual relations or nothing?
No.
Ashley believes Silvio took her complaint too seriously and decided to do something about it.
He would mention that he would do whatever it took to make sure the kids and I are safe. He didn't tell me hey, I'm gonna do this. But I would talk to him and be like, hey, everything's okay. Everything's okay. And he's like, I'll do whatever it has to take, whatever I have to do.
She says they often communicated through Snapchat, an app that does not record messages. Right after the bombing, Silvio used it to contact her.
He said, ... boom. And he said, I felt that from 120 feet away. And I was shocked, and I said, dang.
I immediately had the thought, why are you just now telling us this when you were interviewed on Tuesday and were asked specifically if you knew anything about this, and she played it off as if she knew nothing. Now she's coming forward to make it look like she had no involvement and distance her from it, but put it on someone.
She told us that she had deleted Snapchat off of her phone. That, again, raised a red flag to us. Why would you all of a sudden get rid of it?
At this point, I was heavily suspicious that she was involved in this bombing.
Detectives have no physical evidence linking Ashley to the crime, so their next step is to find the man she's accusing.
I'd stepped out of the attorney's office, and I get contacted that 911 had received a call from Silvio King.
911, where's your emergency?
I've got a note inside my vehicle that says, "You're next, boom."
According to Ashley Haydt, her coworker Silvio King is solely responsible for the explosion that injured her ex-boyfriend. But now Silvio is claiming to be the true bomber's next target.
He had called 911 claiming that he was gonna get blown up. They had a pretty good suspicion that it was not real, because at this point they knew he was the person who planted the device in the back of Danny's truck. So they believed that this was some sort of ruse by Silvio.
Sylvia, you all right?
I feel like I'm gonna pass out.
Now the question was, what was the purpose of the ruse? Is it a situation where there's another device and he plans on detonating it after law enforcement shows up?
This is a very dangerous situation. The number one concern was public safety.
The dispatcher immediately sends law enforcement to the scene.
Ultimately, the dispatcher stayed on the phone with Silvio as long as she could, and I believe she had him get out of his truck and kind of approach law enforcement away from the scene.
Instead of arresting Silvio and tipping him off that they're already aware of his involvement, investigators have him taken to the hospital for treatment.
Silvio may be lying about another bomb in the van, or he may not. So when they first began talking to him, they're not trying to press him too hard to get any kind of confession about the bombing of Danny. Their first priority is getting information from him that might make sure they can make the area where his van is and his apartment safe.
The strategy works. Unaware that he is a person of interest, Silvio grants police permission to search his home and vehicle.
They did a search warrant on the residence and found all kinds of evidence that matched the evidence that was in Danny's truck. The powder, the ammunition, different parts of the ignition wire, part of the remote detonator, all that was found.
Despite these discoveries, detectives still suspect Ashley was heavily involved. So they confront Silvio to see if he will give her up.
We didn't hold nothing back.
I've got a picture right here of you at Hobby Lobby buying items to build these things. Rocket motors, okay? There's you wearing the same clothes you're wearing today. Now is the time for you to step up and do the right thing and make sure that no one else gets hurt.
And at that point, Silvio begins to realize that the jig's up for him. He knows that they found him out.
I just wanted to scare a woman. It wasn't supposed to be like that.
So you went out there Sunday night and placed it in his vehicle, correct? It was a bag, correct?
Yes.
The device was inside a bag.
Silvio said that he planted this device in Danny's truck because Ashley had told him on numerous occasions that Danny was emotionally abusive to her as well as her children.
While Silvio admits he was motivated to act on Ashley's behalf, he seems willing to face the consequences alone.
We'd asked Silvio if Ashley had anything to do with this. And, he says, well, if I told you the truth, I would not be able to live with myself.
What I took from that statement was he couldn't tell us the whole truth because he knew if he told us the whole truth, he was potentially going to cause 5 children to be without their mother.
When he was released from the hospital, he was taken into custody and charged with attempted murder of Danny Brooks.
We knew Ashley was involved, but we had to prove it. Once we started building timelines together, things come a lot more clear to us about Ashley Hayt's involvement in this crime.
Coming up, detectives give Silvio a chance to come clean about the bombing.
He admitted that he wanted a romantic relationship with Ashley.
And new evidence helps bring a culprit to justice.
He was her puppet. She was the puppet master.
Investigators have the confessed bomber Silvio King in custody. Over the next year, as Danny Brooks makes a full recovery, they focus on gathering evidence against the woman they believe plotted his murder, Ashley Haydt.
After Silvio was arrested, there was a search warrant that was executed for his cell phone. And an extraction of his cell phone was done in the same way that one was done on Ashley's. And that included text messages. Ashley never directly asked Silvio to kill Danny. The language was always very cryptic, but it wasn't so cryptic that you couldn't read between the lines and know what was being said.
Some of the messages, for example, related to, her saying, I don't think you have this, and him saying, yes, I do. And then at one point she says, how can I repay you? And Silvio tells her, I'm willing to do a lot for the people I care about a lot. So even though it was obvious in reading the text messages that Ashley was really behind this, we still had to have enough evidence to prove to a jury that she committed this crime.
Because the use of a bomb makes it a federal crime, prosecutors move his case from Alabama to a U.S. district court in late 2018. This means that if Silvio is found guilty, he will have no chance of receiving parole.
Silvio was charged initially with malicious use of an explosive. There's an enhancement if that involves the attempted murder of someone else.
Silvio responds with his new attorney, who tries to negotiate a plea deal.
He came in with his attorney, Special Agent Thompson, attorneys from our office, and he gave us the story.
He tells us in 2017, she approached him to be a friend on Facebook. She started telling him situations about Danny and how Danny was abusive to her. Silvio said that he was abused, coming up.
She knows enough about Silvio's background and the issues that he's had growing up that she knows where the buttons are to push, and that as time goes on, she's grooming him for what she's ultimately going to ask him to do.
After months of Ashley's coaxing, Silvio decided to take action. Silvio tells investigators that in the early morning hours of October 23, 2017, he brought the finished device to Danny's house.
Silvio ended up telling us the way he built the device. It was, I believe, 1.25 inch diameter galvanized pipe filled with gunpowder, and he used the rocket motors, just like we had suspected, as the initiation source. He says he carries the device to Danny's house. When he got there, he pulled the door handle on the driver's side rear door, and it opened. So he said at that point, he decided to place it on the back floorboard.
After planting the bomb, Silvio says he snuck back to his own vehicle and returned home. The next morning, he drove along Danny's normal route, waiting for him to pass by.
And he said, finally, he passed a truck, hit the button, and he heard and felt the explosion from his own truck.
We asked him why he did this, and he admitted that he wanted a romantic relationship with Ashley, and he felt like by going through with trying to remove Danny Brooks from her life that he would have an opportunity. The fatal mistake that Ashley made in this was the fact that once Silvio was taken into custody, he attempted to communicate with her and she did not reciprocate.
Now that Silvio has realized he was taken advantage of, he's willing to give investigators everything they need to make their case against Ashley.
Ashley was indicted for malicious use of an explosive, aiding and abetting. She was indicted for conspiracy, and she was indicted for misprision of a felony.
So once Special Agent Thompson told me that the indictment was in hand and that the warrants were in hand, we got a little plan together to go and arrest Ashley Haydt as she left work.
The only comment that Ashley made to the deputy was, the only thing I did wrong was confiding in a coworker.
Because she thought that her son was going to get taken away because of the custody battle that was going on. Ashley did what she could do to get rid of Danny Brooks.
We were confident in our case, but I think one of the things that certainly mattered was, is the jury going to believe Silvio?
Ashley Haydt's arrest takes place in December 2019, but her trial date is postponed by the COVID outbreak. Prosecutors use the time to form a clearer picture of what drove Ashley to the attempted murder of her ex-boyfriend, Danny Brooks.
She was basically using this pregnancy as a way to try to sucker my father into finally actually marrying her. He finally looked her in the eyes and said, I am not going to marry you, period. And that was when she started the clans.
In order to get her way, she was willing to manipulate somebody into committing an act that she wasn't willing to do herself.
I think Ashley snapped because she was bitter over their breakup. And I think ultimately, once they had actual custody proceedings, I think that she just wanted to prevent him from having their child.
When her trial gets underway in October 2021, prosecutors put their argument before the jury, backed by their star witness, Silvio King.
When AUSA Brandon Bates was questioning Silvio King on direct examination, Brandon asked him if Danny Brooks was sitting in the courtroom. He said no. He said, have you ever seen Danny Brooks? And he said no.
I had on a bright red polo shirt that day. He said, well, he's sitting, right here.
The reason it was so powerful is because it showed, again, but for Ashley Haydt, this never would have happened.
Ashley's attorneys argue that the state's entire case is built on the word of a confessed criminal aiming for a reduced sentence.
The defense just tried to pin it all on Silvio, that Ashley didn't know anything about it, that Silvio took matters into his own hands, but that she had no involvement.
After a 4-day trial, Haydt is found guilty on federal charges of conspiracy, malicious use of an explosive, and concealing the commission of a felony.
Once Ashley was convicted, we went forward with the sentencing for Silvio. We recommended a sentence of 9 years. That's what the judge imposed. A few months later, Ashley was sentenced before the same judge. The judge imposed a sentence of 220 months.
I do feel like justice was served. In a way, he was another victim of hers because she manipulated him by telling him lies.
He was her puppet. She was the puppet master. She played men to get what she wanted. She almost succeeded this time.
As terrifying as the near-death experience was for Danny Brooks, it seems to have given him a new lease on life.
Dealing with this for a long time, I think that it could have changed how I deal with people, but I still think that I try my best to be a good person and help as many people as I can.
We've gotten married. I've started the adoption process for the child. He's thriving. He's happy. We're happy.
This was a bizarre case, and bizarre facts and bizarre circumstances and bizarre motivation.
I felt bad for the children. They won't have their mother for their graduations. They won't have their mother for their weddings, and possibly for their first child being born. They shouldn't be having to deal with that.
I would say if there's red flags, don't ignore them. Don't try to paint over them. Like, if you have a gut feeling, there's a reason, follow it, and always check the back seat.
The quiet and industrious town of Dothan, Alabama, has always prided itself on its peaceful atmosphere, where neighbors know one another, and the rhythms of daily life proceed with a comforting predictability. However, on the morning of October 23, 2017, this serene backdrop was suddenly shattered by a violent and highly unusual event. For a local mechanic and devoted father named Danny Brooks, the day began like any other. He woke up early, prepared for his commute, and set out in his company truck to begin a standard workday. His route was a familiar 15 to 20-minute drive, a path he had traversed countless times without incident. Yet, within a split second of passing an oncoming vehicle, a powerful explosion rocked his truck, instantly blowing out the windows, filling the cabin with disorienting smoke, and leaving behind the distinct chemical odor of burnt fuel. In the immediate aftermath of the blast, Danny found himself trapped inside the vehicle, his ears ringing and his senses completely overwhelmed. Struggling against the damaged frame of the truck, he was unable to push the door open from the inside. Fortunately, a passing motorist witnessed the aftermath of the event and immediately pulled over to render aid. This helpful citizen managed to pry the door open from the outside, allowing a dazed and injured Danny to escape the smoking cabin. As Danny stood up, he felt a sharp, excruciating pain concentrated on his left side, hip, and back. Upon reaching behind himself, his hand came away covered in blood, a sight that confirmed the severity of the situation. The passing motorist immediately contacted emergency dispatchers, reporting that an individual was on the side of the road, bleeding heavily from his back after hearing a sudden explosion inside his truck. When first responders and local law enforcement officers arrived at the scene, they quickly recognized that this was no ordinary vehicular accident. The surrounding roadway was littered with shattered glass, and a closer inspection of the vehicle revealed a distinct hole blasted through the driver's seat. Looking down into the floorboard behind the seat, responding officers noticed exposed wires and what appeared to be an electronic circuit board. Realizing the extreme danger of the situation, the commanding officer immediately took steps to secure the area, establishing a wide perimeter to protect the public and requesting the assistance of the bomb squad. The presence of such a device raised immediate, chilling questions for the investigators. They had to determine whether this was an isolated incident targeted at a specific individual or the beginning of a broader, more systemic threat to the community. As Danny was rushed to a nearby hospital to undergo emergency surgery for the removal of shrapnel, a joint investigation was launched, bringing together the Dothan Police Department and the federal agents from the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. At the scene, bomb technicians carefully swept the vehicle and the surrounding area, ensuring no secondary devices were present. They recovered crucial physical evidence from the roadway and the interior of the truck, including fragments of galvanized metal pipe, a 12-volt battery commonly used for motorcycles, black powder residue, and several small metal projectiles designed to maximize physical harm upon detonation. The sophisticated nature of the device, which utilized an electronic remote trigger to ignite rocket motors and detonate the black powder, made it clear that this was a deliberate, premeditated attempt to end a life. To uncover the identity of the perpetrator, investigators began by looking closely at Danny Brooks' personal life. Born and raised in Dothan, Danny was a well-respected member of the community who had faced significant personal tragedies with remarkable strength. Following a divorce in 2004 from his first wife, Casey, Danny was granted majority custody of their 2 children. Tragically, on Thanksgiving Day in 2005, Casey lost her life in a severe automobile accident, leaving Danny as a single father to raise their young son and their special needs daughter. By all accounts, Danny threw himself into his parental responsibilities, volunteering as a local youth scout leader and ensuring his children had a stable, loving environment. It was through these community activities in 2013 that Danny met Ashley Nicole Haydt, a mother of 3, who had recently relocated to the area from Pennsylvania. Danny and Ashley began a romantic relationship that lasted for approximately 3 years. While they initially enjoyed each other's company, tension began to mount as Ashley began pushing for marriage, a commitment that Danny was not ready to make. By 2016, the couple decided to part ways, but shortly thereafter, Ashley discovered she was pregnant. Following the birth of their son, Lincoln, a highly contentious custody battle ensued. Danny, committed to being an active full-time father, sought equal involvement in his youngest son's life, leading to escalating legal disagreements that required representation from custody attorneys. During this difficult period, Danny eventually moved forward with his life, entering into a new, supportive relationship with a woman named Christina, who was also navigating her own complex separation from an estranged partner. Initially, investigators explored multiple avenues, including the possibility that Christina's estranged husband, who had a history of difficult behavior, might have targeted Danny out of jealousy. However, a thorough investigation quickly cleared him of any involvement. His cell phone records placed him far from the scene of the crime, and a search of his residence yielded no suspicious materials. Turning their attention back to the custody dispute, an agent from the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives interviewed Ashley Haydt at her workplace the day after the bombing. Ashley appeared cooperative, providing a detailed account of her day, consenting to a download of her cell phone data, and claiming to have no knowledge of who would want to harm Danny. Because her alibi was solid, and the initial phone extraction revealed no obvious incriminating evidence, investigators had to rely heavily on the physical components of the bomb to trace its origin. The breakthrough in the investigation came from a meticulous analysis of the specific wires and rocket motors used in the explosive device. Investigators identified the components as hobby rocket ignition motors, a product commonly sold at craft and hobby retail stores, including the local Hobby Lobby. Agents immediately visited the store to review sales records and surveillance footage from the days leading up to the bombing. Their efforts were rewarded when they identified a surveillance video showing a Caucasian male in a mechanic shirt and glasses purchasing the exact type of rocket motors used in the device. Furthermore, the suspect made a critical error by paying for the transaction with a credit card, which allowed investigators to quickly subpoena the financial institution and identify the cardholder. Before the bank could return the official records, the investigation took a highly dramatic turn. 3 days after the bombing, Ashley Haydt contacted a local attorney and requested a meeting with law enforcement. During this meeting, Ashley claimed that she had sudden information regarding the crime, pointing the finger at her coworker, Silvio King. She asserted that Silvio had developed feelings for her and had grown increasingly upset over the emotional distress she was experiencing due to the ongoing custody battle with Danny. According to Ashley, Silvio had sent her a message on a popular self-deleting messaging application immediately after the blast, claiming responsibility for planting the device. When shown the surveillance photographs from the hobby store, Ashley confirmed that the individual in the image was indeed Silvio King. As investigators prepared to locate Silvio, emergency dispatchers received a frantic call from Silvio himself, claiming that he had discovered a threatening note inside his vehicle, warning him that he was the next target. Recognizing this as a potential ruse designed to deflect suspicion, or perhaps a volatile situation involving another hidden device, law enforcement acted with extreme caution. They dispatched officers to his location, guided him safely away from his vehicle, and had him transported to a hospital for a medical evaluation. With Silvio temporarily secured, investigators obtained a search warrant for his residence and vehicle. The subsequent search uncovered an overwhelming amount of physical evidence, including galvanized pipes, gunpowder, matching ignition wires, a 12-volt battery, and components of a remote control transmitter, leaving no doubt that Silvio was the individual who constructed and planted the bomb. During his interrogation, Silvio realized that the evidence against him was undeniable. He admitted to purchasing the materials, building the device, and sneaking onto Danny's property in the early morning hours of October 23rd to place the bomb on the rear floorboard of the truck. He then waited along Danny's commute route and detonated the device remotely as Danny drove past. However, when questioned about Ashley's involvement, Silvio hesitated, expressing a deep reluctance to implicate her because he did not want her children to be left without a mother. This hesitation, combined with a forensic extraction of Silvio's cell phone, revealed the true, manipulative nature of the conspiracy. The extracted text messages between Ashley and Silvio, though carefully worded and often cryptic, painted a clear picture of psychological manipulation. Ashley had actively played upon Silvio's own history of childhood adversity, positioning herself as a helpless victim of an abusive ex-partner to elicit his protective instincts. She systematically groomed Silvio, dropping subtle hints and questioning his willingness to help her, until he felt compelled to take drastic action on her behalf under the false impression that it would lead to a romantic relationship. In late 2018, because the offense involved the malicious use of an explosive device, the case was moved to federal court, where there is no option for parole. Faced with the reality of his situation, Silvio agreed to cooperate with prosecutors and testify against Ashley. In December 2019, federal warrants were issued, and Ashley Haydt was arrested as she left her workplace. Though her defense attorneys argued during the October 2021 trial that Silvio had acted entirely on his own, without her consent or knowledge, the prosecution presented a compelling case built on forensic phone data, financial transactions, and Silvio's own detailed testimony. The jury found Ashley guilty on federal charges of conspiracy, malicious use of an explosive device, and concealing a felony. The presiding judge sentenced Silvio to 9 years in federal prison, reflecting his cooperation and his role as a manipulated tool in the scheme, while Ashley received a sentence of 220 months, equivalent to over 18 years without the possibility of parole. This tragic and complex case highlights several profound psychological and sociological motives that frequently drive individuals to commit such extreme acts of violence. At its core, the crime was fueled by intense resentment, custody-related bitterness, and a profound desire for control. When Danny Brooks firmly established boundaries and refused to be coerced into marriage, Ashley experienced a deep narcissistic injury. Rather than navigating the legal custody framework through standard peaceful channels, she viewed Danny's insistence on being an active father as an obstacle to be permanently removed. The frequency of custody-related crimes in society often stems from this distorted sense of ownership, where children are treated as leverage, and former partners are viewed as adversaries rather than co-parents. Another critical element of this case is the chilling sophistication of the emotional manipulation involved. Ashley did not construct the physical explosive device herself, nor did she press the button to detonate it. Instead, she acted as a puppet master, identifying a vulnerable individual with a history of trauma and systematically exploiting his emotional deficits. Silvio's desire to protect and his longing for romantic validation made him the perfect instrument for her design. This form of proxy violence allows the primary instigator to maintain a sense of psychological detachment and plausible deniability, a common trait among manipulative personalities who seek to inflict harm while avoiding direct consequences. From an investigative standpoint, the rapid resolution of this case underscores the vital importance of combining traditional, meticulous physical forensic work with modern digital technology. The perpetrator's sophistication in building a remote detonated pipe bomb was ultimately undone by simple human errors and the inescapable digital footprint of modern society. By tracing the unique physical components of the device back to their retail origin, investigators were able to bypass the deceptive narratives spun by the suspects. The integration of high-definition retail surveillance, financial transaction records, and advanced mobile phone data extraction allowed the police to construct an airtight timeline that exposed the lies of both conspirators. For law enforcement agencies seeking to expedite the capture of perpetrators in similar complex investigations, several valuable lessons can be drawn from this success. First, the immediate consolidation of local and federal resources, such as the partnership between the Dothan Police Department and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, is essential for rapid evidence processing. Second, maintaining a broad, objective investigative scope in the early hours prevents tunnel vision, ensuring that all potential suspects are thoroughly vetted without premature assumptions. Finally, the strategic use of patience and tactical containment, such as treating Silvio as a medical patient rather than immediately arresting him at the scene of his staged emergency, prevented a potentially volatile situation from escalating into further public danger. Ultimately, this story offers profound life lessons for communities and individuals alike. It serves as a stark warning about the importance of recognizing red flags in relationships, particularly when a partner exhibits manipulative tendencies, an inability to respect boundaries, or a pattern of presenting themselves exclusively as a victim while blaming others. It also highlights the absolute necessity of resolving personal and domestic disputes through peaceful, legal, and therapeutic avenues, rather than allowing bitterness to fester into destructive anger. For Danny Brooks, who survived this terrifying ordeal and has since built a happy, stable life with Kepaite, his wife, Christina, and his children, the victory of justice stands as a testament to human resilience and the enduring power of community, showing that even in the face of absolute malice, integrity and truth will ultimately prevail. The peace of a small southern town is a delicate tapestry woven from daily routines, familiar faces, and the shared expectation of safety. In the quiet community of Dothan, Alabama, this tranquility was abruptly shattered on a crisp autumn morning, introducing the residents to a level of violence that seemed entirely foreign to their peaceful streets. The events that unfolded on Monday, October 23, 2017, serve as an extraordinary study in the destructive power of human manipulation, the complex psychology of proxy violence, and the ultimate triumph of methodical forensic science and dedicated law enforcement. This case highlights how deep-seated resentment can fester within the human heart, transforming personal disappointments into a calculated plan for destruction, while also demonstrating the resilience of the human spirit in the face of unexpected trauma. The day began like any other for Danny Brooks, a dedicated mechanic and lifelong resident of Dothan. Born in September 1974 to hardworking parents, Danny had built a life centered around his family and his community. His commute on that Monday morning was a routine he had performed countless times before, driving his company truck to coordinate a welding job for the day. He had prepared for his workday alongside his girlfriend, Christina, and was driving along his usual route when his life was instantly altered. As his truck passed an oncoming vehicle, a sudden and massive explosion rocked the cabin of his vehicle. The blast was instantaneous and completely disorienting, filling the air with a deafening ring, the strong odor of burnt lighter fluid, and a cloud of debris. The windows of the truck were entirely blown out, and the driver door was severely jammed, trapping him inside the smoking cabin. Despite the shock and disorientation of the blast, the survival instincts of Danny immediately took over. He managed to flag down a passing motorist, who quickly stopped to assist. This helpful citizen was able to pry the damaged truck door open from the outside, allowing Danny to escape the vehicle. It was only upon standing on the side of the road that Danny realized he had sustained severe physical trauma with significant bleeding across his back and hip. The motorist immediately contacted the emergency operators at 911, reporting that an individual had experienced an explosion in his truck and was suffering from substantial injuries. Paramedics arrived swiftly to provide medical attention and transport him to a nearby hospital, while the local police department arrived to secure what would quickly become a highly complex crime scene. The initial response of the police officers was marked by cautious professionalism. As they approached the damaged truck, they observed a significant amount of shattered glass scattered across the roadway and a distinct hole in the driver's seat. Looking closer into the floorboard behind the seat, an investigator noticed a collection of wires and an electronic board. The physical evidence strongly suggested that this was not a mechanical failure or an accidental vehicle fire, but rather a deliberate act of violence involving an explosive device. Recognizing the potential danger of secondary devices, the police quickly closed the surrounding roads, established a secured perimeter, and summoned the bomb squad alongside the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives to conduct a comprehensive forensic investigation. To understand why anyone would target Danny Brooks Vey such extreme violence, investigators had to examine the history of his life and relationships. Danny had faced significant hardships in his past, yet he had consistently met them with strength and devotion. Following his divorce from his first wife, Casey Shaw, in 2004, Danny was thrust into the role of a single father under tragic circumstances. On Thanksgiving Day in 2005, Casey was killed in a severe car accident, leaving Danny to raise their 2 young children alone. One of these children was a daughter with significant developmental delays who required specialized care, and the other was a 2-year-old son named Zachary. Danny dedicated himself entirely to the well-being of his children, balancing his demanding work as a mechanic with his responsibilities as a father, even volunteering as a Cub Scout leader for his son. It was through his involvement with the Cub Scouts in 2013 that Danny met Ashley Nicole Haydt. Ashley had recently relocated to the area from Pennsylvania to build a relationship with her maternal family, bringing her own children into the community. She initially appeared sweet, supportive, and highly positive, making her a natural fit for Danny and his family. The two began dating, and for a long time, the arrangement seemed stable and harmonious. However, as the years progressed, the expectations of the two partners began to diverge. Ashley increasingly desired marriage, believing it was essential for her happiness, while Danny was content with their current situation and did not wish to rush into another marital commitment. By 2016, their inability to agree on the future of their relationship led to an amicable separation. Shortly after their breakup, Ashley discovered she was pregnant, and their son Lincoln was born in the following year of 2017. This new development completely transformed the nature of their interaction. While Danny was determined to be a highly active, full-time father, he remained resolute that their romantic relationship was permanently over. This firm boundary did not sit well with Ashley, and the former couple soon found themselves embroiled in a contentious legal battle over custody and parental rights. During this same period, Danny began moving forward with his personal life, entering into a supportive and loving relationship with his new girlfriend, Christina. This transition set the stage for a deep-seated resentment to grow within Ashley, who began to view Danny as an obstacle to her own desires and the future she wanted for herself and her children. While Danny was recovering in the hospital and undergoing surgery to remove shrapnel from his back, forensic specialists were meticulously analyzing the remnants of the explosive device. The blast had occurred on the rear floorboard, directly behind the driver's seat, designed to direct the maximum force of the explosion toward the driver. Investigators recovered fragments of a galvanized metal pipe, a 12-volt motorcycle battery, black powder, and numerous small metal projectiles designed to act as shrapnel. This combination of components indicated a high level of deliberate planning, intended to cause lethal harm to anyone inside the cabin. Among the debris, the certified explosives specialists identified a highly specific component, the wiring and motors typically used for model hobby rockets. This small, seemingly insignificant clue proved to be the critical turning point in the investigation. Agents from the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives recognized that these specific hobby rocket motors were sold at nationwide craft stores, including the local Hobby Lobby in Dothan. Investigators immediately visited the store to review recent sales records and security footage. Their diligence was rewarded when they discovered that a customer had purchased the exact type of model rocket motor used in the device d'uete days prior to the explosion. The surveillance footage revealed a Caucasian male wearing a mechanic shirt, glasses, and a black hat. Crucially, the individual made the critical error of paying for the purchase with a traceable credit card, allowing law enforcement to initiate the process of identifying him through financial records. While waiting for the financial institution to return the subpoenaed credit card information, investigators faced a sudden and unexpected development. On the Thursday following the Monday explosion, Ashley Haydt contacted a local attorney and requested a meeting with the sheriff. During this meeting, Ashley claimed that she had valuable information regarding the bombing. She told investigators that a coworker of hers, a man named Silvio King, had confessed to planting the explosive device in the truck of Danny. She asserted that Silvio had become a close friend at their workplace, where she had confided in him about her ongoing custody disputes and the emotional stress she was experiencing. According to Ashley, Silvio had taken her complaints deeply to heart, declaring that he would do whatever it took to keep her and her children safe. Ashley claimed that immediately after the explosion, Silvio had contacted her through a social media messaging application, sending a highly suspicious message containing the word boom and indicating that he had felt the blast from a significant distance. She further stated that she had subsequently deleted the application from her phone out of fear and confusion. While Ashley presented herself as a cooperative and concerned citizen who was merely bringing a dangerous individual to justice, her sudden appearance and the timing of her confession raised immediate red flags for the seasoned investigators. They questioned why she had waited several days to bring this critical information forward, especially after she had been interviewed by law enforcement the day after the bombing and had claimed to have absolutely no knowledge of who could be responsible. Her attempt to distance herself from the crime by pointing the finger entirely at her coworker suggested a calculated effort to control the narrative before the police could trace the purchase of the bomb components back to her social circle. The situation became even more dramatic and bizarre shortly after the meeting at the attorney's office. The emergency services of Dothan received a call from Silvio King himself, who claimed that he was in immediate danger. He reported that he had discovered a threatening note inside his vehicle which stated that he was the next target of an explosion. The local police recognized this call as a highly probable ruse, likely designed by Silvio to portray himself as a victim rather than a suspect. However, given the nature of the threat and the potential presence of additional explosive devices, law enforcement had to treat the situation with extreme caution to ensure public safety. Officers arrived at the scene, secured Silvio away from his vehicle, and transported him to a hospital for evaluation, ensuring that he remained under close observation without alerting him that he was the prime suspect. While Silvio was at the hospital, investigators obtained consent to search his residence and his vehicle. The subsequent searches yielded an overwhelming amount of incriminating evidence that perfectly matched the components recovered from the bombed truck. Agents discovered black powder, identical wiring, ammunition used for projectiles, and portions of a remote detonator. Faced with this undeniable physical evidence and the surveillance photos from the craft store showing him purchasing the hobby rocket motors, Silvio realized that his attempts to evade responsibility had failed. He agreed to speak with investigators and provided a full confession, admitting that he had built the device and placed it inside the truck of Danny during the early morning hours of October 23, 2017. The confession of Silvio King revealed the profound depth of the manipulation orchestrated by Ashley Haydt. Silvio explained that he had grown up in an abusive household and carried deep psychological scars from his childhood. When he began working alongside Ashley, she quickly recognized his vulnerabilities and began a systematic process of emotional grooming. She repeatedly painted a picture of herself as a helpless victim of severe emotional abuse at the hands of Danny, falsely claiming that her children were also in danger. By sharing these fabricated stories, she skillfully pushed the psychological buttons of Silvio, activating his intense desire to act as a protector and a savior. He admitted that he had fallen in love with her and believed that by removing Danny from her life, he would finally have an opportunity to establish a romantic relationship with her. Silvio detailed the logistics of the crime, explaining how he had filled a 1 1/4-inch galvanized metal pipe cap to hot black powder, utilized the model rocket motors as the initiation source, and packed the device with bullets to maximize the shrapnel effect. He had snuck onto the property of Danny in the dark, found the rear door of the truck unlocked, and placed the device on the floorboard. The following morning, he parked along the commute route of Danny, waiting for the truck to pass before activating the remote transmitter to detonate the bomb. When asked if Ashley had been directly involved, Silvio initially hesitated, expressing a desire to protect her so that her 5 children would not be left without a mother. This reluctance to fully implicate her demonstrated the lingering power of her influence over him, even after his arrest. However, the digital evidence collected by forensic examiners provided the definitive proof that the prosecutors needed to establish the complicity of Ashley. A thorough extraction of the text messages from the phone of Silvio revealed a highly calculated, cryptic dialogue between the 2 co-conspirators. Although they had attempted to use self-deleting messaging applications to hide their communication, their standard text messages contained clear indications of a shared plan. Ashley had continuously questioned whether Silvio had the resolve to carry out the act, and when he assured her of his commitment, she asked how she could ever repay him. To this, Silvio had responded that he was willing to do a lot for the people he cared about. The messages painted a clear picture of a puppet master directing her puppet, using subtle encouragement and emotional rewards to drive him toward a lethal act of violence. Because the crime involved the malicious use of an explosive device, the case was transferred to the federal court system, where there is no possibility of parole. In late 2018, Silvio King entered into a plea agreement, agreeing to plead guilty and testify fully against Ashley Haydt in exchange for a recommended sentence of 9 years in prison. This cooperation provided the prosecution with an invaluable insider perspective, detailing how the conspiracy had been initiated, nurtured, and executed. Armed with this testimony, the physical evidence, and the digital forensic reports, federal prosecutors secured an indictment against Ashley Haydt for conspiracy, malicious use of an explosive, and concealing the commission of a felony. In December 2019, law enforcement officers arrested Ashley as she left her workplace. Even during her arrest, she attempted to minimize her culpability, claiming that her only mistake had been confiding in a coworker. Her trial was delayed due to the global health disruptions of 2020, but eventually commenced in October 2021. Over the course of the 4-day trial, the prosecution presented a seamless and compelling case to the jury. The most powerful moment occurred during the testimony of Silvio, who admitted under direct examination that he had never once met Danny Brooks in person prior to seeing him in the courtroom. This stark revelation made it undeniably clear to the jury that Silvio had no personal grievance against the victim, and that his actions were entirely the result of the manipulation and direction of Ashley. The defense attempted to argue that Silvio was a rogue actor who had taken matters into his ove-kept-no hands without the knowledge or consent of Ashley, suggesting that he was fabricating her involvement to secure a lighter sentence. However, the jury was not swayed by this defense, recognizing the clear pattern of behavior and the supporting digital evidence. After deliberate consideration, the jury found Ashley Haydt guilty on all federal charges. The presiding judge subsequently sentenced her to 220 months in federal prison, representing over 18 years of confinement without the possibility of parole. Silvio King was sentenced to 9 years for his role in the crime, reflecting both his direct execution of the bombing and his substantial cooperation with law enforcement. This tragic case offers profound insights into the motives behind such extreme crimes and the underlying reasons why relationship disputes can sometimes escalate into violence. At its core, the crime was driven by a toxic combination of rejection, entitlement, and extreme selfishness. When Danny Brooks established a firm boundary and refused to marry Ashley, her perception of control was shattered. Rather than accepting this reality and focusing on a constructive co-parenting relationship for the benefit of their son, she allowed her resentment to grow. Her motivation was not merely a dispute over custody, but a deeper, more malicious desire to completely eliminate Danny from her life, thereby reclaiming absolute control over her circumstances and punishing him for his rejection. The frequency of jhene cases in modern society often stems from a psychological phenomenon known as proxy violence, where an individual seeks to achieve a violent outcome while maintaining a safe physical and legal distance from the act itself. In many instances, the instigator of the crime lacks the technical capability, the physical courage, or the willingness to face the immediate consequences of committing a violent act. By finding a vulnerable, impressionable accomplice and exploiting their psychological needs, the masterminds of these plots create a buffer between themselves and the crime. They convince themselves that because they did not physically build or detonate the device, they bear no legal or moral responsibility. This modern disconnect, often amplified by the illusion of anonymity provided by digital communication, leads individuals to believe they can orchestrate severe harm with complete impunity. The successful resolution of this case highlights the critical details and clues that law enforcement relies upon to solve complex crimes. The physical evidence recovered from the scene of the blast was paramount. By carefully gathering even the smallest fragments of galvanized metal, wires, and electronic boards, the investigators were able to reconstruct the anatomy of the device. The identification of the hobby rocket motors as the initiation source provided the essential link to a retail environment, allowing the police to narrow their focus to local hobby stores. This methodical approach demonstrates that no matter how carefully a criminal plans an act of violence, the physical world always retains trace evidence of their actions. Furthermore, the reliance of the investigators on financial forensics and digital extraction proved to be the ultimate undoing of the conspiracy. The decision of Silvio to use a credit card for a highly sensitive purchase created an indelible digital footprint that immediately pierced his anonymity. When combined with the high-definition security footage from the retail store, his identity was established beyond doubt before he even realized he was a suspect. Additionally, the extraction of supposedly deleted data from the cellular phones of the co-conspirators shattered their defense. Modern digital forensics has advanced to a level where the digital trail of a conspiracy is incredibly difficult to erase, providing a permanent record of intent, coordination, and execution that can be presented clearly to a jury. The sophistication of the criminals in this case was characterized by a dangerous mix of technical competence and extreme psychological manipulation, contrasted sharply with a naive misunderstanding of modern forensic capabilities. Silvio possessed the mechanical aptitude to construct a highly dangerous remote detonated pipe bomb, utilizing a sophisticated array of components to maximize the destructive potential of the device. Ashley displayed a high level of psychological sophistication, identifying the specific childhood trauma of her coworker and using it to groom him into a willing assassin. However, their physical and digital operational security was remarkably flawed. Their reliance on standard retail outlets, traceable payment methods, and easily recoverable text messages revealed a fundamental failure to grasp how effectively modern law enforcement can connect the dots of a conspiracy. This ironic gap between their complex plotting and their elementary mistakes ultimately ensured their rapid apprehension. Valuable life lessons can be drawn from this tragic event to prevent similar occurrences in the future. First and foremost, the community must remain vigilant against the warning signs of extreme emotional manipulation in personal and professional relationships. It is essential to recognize when an individual is consistently portraying themselves as an absolute victim while casting others as entirely malevolent, especially when they seek to recruit others to intervene in their personal disputes. Healthy boundaries must be maintained, and any attempt by an acquaintance or coworker to draw someone into a highly charged, hostile family situation should be met with caution and a referral to professional mediation or law enforcement. Additionally, this case underscores the importance of seeking peaceful, legal channels to resolve domestic and custody conflicts. The legal system provides robust mechanisms for determining parental rights, custody arrangements, and child support designed to prioritize the best interests of the children involved. When individuals allow personal bitterness to override these lawful processes, the consequences are invariably devastating, not only for the immediate targets of their anger, but also for the innocent children who are left to grow up without the presence of their parents. The ultimate tragedy of this case is that 5 innocent children were separated from their mother, and a young boy was deprived of a normal relationship with his father, all because of a calculated decision to bypass the law in pursuit of personal vengeance. To accelerate the apprehension of perpetrators in similar complex cases, law enforcement agencies can draw valuable insights from the successful techniques used by the Dothan Police and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. The seamless integration of local municipal officers and federal specialized agents was critical to the rapid resolution of this investigation. By combining the local knowledge and immediate response capabilities of the Dothan Police with the specialized technical expertise and national databases of the federal agents, the task force was able to trace the bomb components, review surveillance video, and secure search warrants within a remarkably short time frame, establishing pre-arranged, multi-agency protocols for high-priority incidents ensures that valuable time is not lost in the critical first 48 hours of an investigation. Furthermore, the rapid deployment of digital forensic tools is essential in modern investigations. Law enforcement agencies should continue to invest in advanced training and equipment for local digital forensic examiners, enabling them to perform rapid extractions of cellular data and social media communications directly at the scene or shortly after an arrest. In this case, the ability of the investigators to quickly process the phone of Ashley and compare it with the physical evidence recovered from Silvio allowed them to see through their mutual ruses and establish the existence of a conspiracy before the suspects could coordinate a shared cover story. By prioritizing digital forensics as a core component of the initial response, police forces can significantly reduce the time required to identify and apprehend all participants in a criminal conspiracy. In the years following his terrifying experience, Danny Brooks has demonstrated an inspiring resilience and a determination to focus on the positive aspects of his life. Despite the physical and emotional scars left by the explosion, he has refused to allow the incident to define his character or dictate his future. He has married his supportive partner, Christina, and together they have built a stable, loving household, even initiating the formal adoption process to ensure the long-term security and happiness of his youngest son. Danny continues to work as a skilled mechanic and remains an active, dedicated member of his community, proving that the strength of a good person, supported by a loving family and a committed justice system, can ultimately overcome the most calculated acts of malice. His story stands as a powerful testament to the victory of good over evil, the vital importance of community vigilance, and the enduring value of a methodical, dedicated pursuit of justice. The quiet routines of a peaceful community often provide a sense of security that many of us take for granted. In towns where neighbors know one another by name, where the morning commute follows a predictable path, and where the sounds of daily life are familiar and comforting, the sudden disruption of peace can feel entirely surreal. When a violent event occurs in such a setting, it challenges our collective understanding of safety and forces us to look more closely at the complexities of human behavior, trust, and the unexpected paths that some individuals choose to follow. The event that unfolded in the town of Dothan, Alabama, serves as a profound case study in human psychology, the devastating consequences of manipulation, and the meticulous nature of modern law enforcement. By examining this case, we can gain a deeper understanding of the motives behind jhene actions, the critical clues that allow investigators to piece together truth from deception, and the lasting lessons we must carry forward to protect our families and our communities. To understand why such an event could happen in a peaceful town, we must first look at the psychological motives that drive individuals to commit acts of extreme malice. In many criminal cases, the underlying motivation is not a sudden, inexplicable burst of anger, but rather a slow, calculated accumulation of resentment, entitlement, and a desire for control. When a relationship ends, most people experience a period of grief, adjustment, and eventual acceptance. However, for individuals who possess a highly manipulative and self-centered worldview, the end of a relationship is not seen as a mutual parting, but as a personal slight and a loss of dominance. In this specific case, the primary driver was a profound sense of rejection, coupled with a custody dispute over a young child. Rather than seeking a peaceful, legal resolution that prioritized the well-being of the child, the instigator viewed the situation as a battle that had to be won at any cost. This desire for total control, when blocked by the legal system and the firm boundaries set by another person, transformed into a bitter desire for absolute retaliation. The frequency of such disputes in society highlights a broader societal issue regarding how conflict is managed. Custody battles and relationship breakdowns are common occurrences, yet the vast majority of people navigate them through legal channels and personal mediation. The reason cases of extreme retaliation occur, even if infrequently, is often linked to the presence of individuals who lack empathy and are highly skilled at manipulating others to perform actions they themselves are unwilling to commit. This dynamic of the puppet master and the willing instrument is a recurring theme in complex criminal investigations. It reveals how a person with a grievance can identify a vulnerable individual, groom them over time by playing on their insecurities, and ultimately direct them to carry out a dangerous act. Understanding this psychological manipulation is crucial for recognizing the early warning signs of danger in our personal lives. For the victim in this case, a dedicated mechanic named Danny Brooks, life had already presented significant challenges that he had met with resilience and grace. Born in Dothan, Alabama, in the year 1974, Danny was a lifelong resident of the area, raised by hardworking parents who instilled in him a strong work ethic. After completing his education, he built a career as a skilled mechanic and started a family. In the year 1998, he and his then-wife welcomed a daughter. As the child grew, Danny and his wife noticed developmental delays, and they soon learned that their daughter had special needs. Rather than being discouraged, Danny embraced his role as a father with complete devotion. A few years later, their son Zachary was born, adding more joy to their household. Tragedy struck the family in the year 2005, on the day of Thanksgiving. Danny's former wife was involved in a severe automobile accident and passed away at the scene. Suddenly, Danny found himself as a single father, responsible for a special needs daughter and a 2-year-old son. Those who knew him observed that he handled this immense responsibility with remarkable strength, dedicated to ensuring that both of his children had every opportunity to thrive. He volunteered as a Cub Scout leader when his son reached school age, seeking to be actively involved in every aspect of his children's development. It was during his time volunteering with the youth organization in the year 2013 that he met Ashley Nicole Haydt, a mother of children in the same group who had recently moved to the area from Pennsylvania. The relationship between Danny and Ashley began naturally, built on shared activities and a seemingly positive connection. However, as the years passed, differences in their expectations for the future became apparent. By the year 2016, after approximately 3 years together, they decided to end their relationship. Shortly after the separation, Ashley realized she was pregnant. Following the birth of their son, Lincoln, in the year 2017, the dynamics of their interaction shifted dramatically. Danny, true to his character, committed to being an active full-time father, but he maintained a clear boundary that his personal relationship with Ashley was permanently over. This boundary became a source of significant friction, leading to a legal dispute over the custody of their young son. While Danny focused on his work and began a new relationship with a supportive partner named Christina, Ashley's resentment grew. Unable to accept the finality of the separation and the legal parameters of joint custody, she began to formulate a plan. Rather than acting directly, she looked to her social circle for someone she could influence. She found that individual in a coworker named Silvio King. Silvio was a person with a complicated background, having experienced personal difficulties and vulnerabilities during his youth. Ashley, recognizing these traits, began to cultivate a close friendship with him. She shared stories that painted her interactions with Danny in an extremely negative light, portraying herself as a victim and playing on Silvio's protective instincts. Over a period of several months, she slowly groomed him, building a bond of dependency and suggesting that her happiness and safety could only be secured if Danny were removed from the picture. Driven by a desire for a romantic relationship with Ashley and a misguided sense of chivalry, became completely susceptible to her influence. He agreed to construct and plant an explosive device, believing that this extreme act would solve Ashley's problems and allow them to be together. On the morning of Monday, October 23, 2017, Danny Brooks prepared for his workday DUAT like any other morning. He left his home in his company truck to pick up colleagues and equipment for a welding job. Approximately 15 to 20 minutes into his commute, as another vehicle passed him, going in the opposite direction, a sudden and powerful explosion occurred inside his truck. The force of the detonation was immense, instantly shattering the windows of the vehicle and filling the cabin with smoke and the distinct odor of burnt fuel. Disoriented and experiencing intense pain in his back and left side, Danny tried to open the driver's side door, but found it jammed. Realizing the windows were gone, he managed to signal a passing motorist for assistance. The helpful citizen stopped, opened the damaged door from the outside, and helped Danny out of the truck. It was only then that they noticed Danny was bleeding significantly from wounds on his back. The citizen immediately contacted emergency services by calling 911, reporting that an individual was on the side of the road experiencing injuries following an explosion in his vehicle. When first responders and law enforcement officers arrived at the scene, their primary objective was to secure the area and ensure medical attention for the injured driver. As paramedics transported Danny to a nearby hospital, investigators began a meticulous examination of the vehicle and the surrounding roadway. The initial assessment revealed a large amount of shattered glass scattered across the pavement and a significant hole in the driver's seat floorboard, with the metal underneath bent outward. Upon peering behind the seat, an investigator spotted exposed wires and what appeared to be an electronic circuit board. Recognizing the immediate danger of a secondary device, the commanding officer ordered the area to be evacuated, established a secure perimeter, closed the road to public traffic, and requested the assistance of a specialized bomb squad. As the bomb squad and agents from the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives arrived to secure the scene, they began the painstaking process of collecting physical evidence. The analysis of the debris was the first critical step in tracking down the perpetrator. Investigators recovered fragments of galvanized metal from the roadway and the grass, which indicated that a metal pipe had been used to contain the explosive material. They also discovered specialized wiring, a 12-volt motorcycle battery, and remnants of black powder. Most significantly, they found multiple small projectiles that had been placed around the device to maximize the damage upon detonation. The sophisticated nature of the construction indicated that the builder had a clear understanding of electrical ignition systems and explosive dynamics. The search for clues then turned to the specific components of the device. Among the debris, forensic specialists identified wiring and ignition elements commonly associated with hobby rocket motors. This finding proved to be one of the most important leads in the entire investigation. Agents from the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives knew that these specific rocket motors were sold at local hobby and craft retailers. They immediately dispatched investigators to check recent purchase records at stores in the region, including a local Hobby Lobby. By reviewing hours of security camera footage from the days preceding the explosion, investigators identified a customer who purchased the exact model of rocket motor used in the device. The surveillance footage captured a Caucasian male of average height and weight, wearing glasses, a black hat, and a mechanic-style shirt. While the visual identification was helpful, the suspect made a critical error that provided investigators with an undeniable digital lead. He paid for the purchase using a credit card. Although the transaction record did not immediately display the cardholder's name, it provided a card number that allowed investigators to secure a legal subpoena for the associated financial records. This demonstrated a common vulnerability in even the most planned criminal acts. The failure to account for the digital footprint left behind during the acquisition of materials. While waiting for the financial institution to return the identification details, investigators visited Danny Brooks in the hospital, where he was recovering from surgery to remove debris from his back. When shown the surveillance photograph of the individual at the hobby store, Danny was unable to identify him, noting that the description was quite common. When asked if anyone might wish to harm him, Danny explained that he lived a quiet life and had no personal enemies, with the only active conflict being the ongoing custody dispute with his former girlfriend, Nicole Haydt. However, he expressed doubt that she would ever be capable of such an extreme act. Following this lead, investigators prioritized an interview with Ashley. The day after the incident, an agent spoke with her at her place of employment. Ashley appeared cooperative, describing her history with Danny and acknowledging the custody disagreement, but she maintained that the matter was being handled strictly through their respective legal counsels. She provided consent for investigators to perform a digital download of her mobile phone, which at the time yielded no obvious evidence of complicity. Her alibi for the morning of the explosion was also verified, as she was present at her workplace during the time of the incident. Investigators also looked into other potential associates, including the estranged husband of Danny S., current partner Christina. Christina had recently left an unhappy relationship, and her former spouse had expressed displeasure regarding her new connection with Danny. Investigators obtained a search warrant for his residence in a neighboring town and examined his phone records. The digital data confirmed that his phone was miles away from the scene of the explosion at the time of the event, and a physical search of his property revealed nothing suspicious, effectively clearing him of any involvement. 3 days after the explosion, the investigation took a dramatic and unexpected turn. A local attorney contacted the county sheriff, stating that a client wished to share urgent information regarding the active investigation. When investigators arrived at the attorney's office, they found Ashley Haydt waiting for them. In a surprising disclosure, Ashley claimed that a coworker of hers, named Silvio King, had admitted to planting the explosive device in Danny S. truck. She explained that Silvio had developed protective feelings toward her after hearing about her personal struggles, and that he had used a social media application to send her a message referring to the detonation shortly after it occurred. When shown the surveillance photograph from the hobby store, Ashley confirmed that the individual purchasing the rocket motors was indeed Silvio King. This sudden revelation, however, raised immediate concerns for the seasoned investigators. They questioned why Ashley had not shared this critical information during her initial interview just 2 days prior, and why she had chosen to delete the social media application from her phone immediately after the incident. These actions suggested an attempt to distance herself from the crime while placing the sole responsibility on Silvio, prompting investigators to view her with heightened suspicion. As the team prepared to locate Silvio King, a sudden emergency call shifted their focus. The emergency dispatch center received a call from Silvio himself, who was in a state of extreme distress inside his vehicle. He claimed to have found a threatening note indicating that he was the next target of a violent attack. First responders rushed to the scene, treating the situation with extreme caution to ensure public safety. Silvio was transported to a local hospital for evaluation, while investigators worked to determine if the threat was genuine or a calculated distraction. Recognizing that Silvio was the primary suspect in the construction of the device, investigators utilized a strategic approach. They did not immediately confront him with charges, allowing him to believe he was being treated as a potential victim. This approach put him at ease, and he granted permission for law enforcement to search his apartment and his vehicle. The subsequent search yielded an abundance of physical evidence that directly matched the components recovered from Danny S. truck, including identical black powder, wiring, projectiles, and remote control components. Faced with this overwhelming physical evidence and surveillance footage of his purchases, Silvio realized that his attempt to deflect blame had failed. During questioning, he confessed to constructing and placing the device, explaining that he had accessed Danny S. vehicle during the early morning hours and left the package on the rear floorboard. He stated that his motivation was entirely centered on his desire to help Ashley and to build a future with her, believing her claims that Danny was a source of distress in her life. While he admitted his actions, Silvio initially sought to protect Ashley, refusing to implicate her directly in the planning of the crime. The breakthrough that established Ashley's active participation came from a detailed forensic extraction of Silvio's mobile phone. Although Ashley had deleted her messages, Silvio S. device retained records of their communications. The exchange of messages revealed a consistent pattern of manipulation. While Ashley rarely made direct requests, her language was highly suggestive, encouraging Silvio's protective instincts and implicitly rewarding his willingness to take action on her behalf. In one notable exchange, when Silvio asserted his willingness to do anything for those he cared about, Ashley inquired how she could ever repay him. This digital evidence provided the necessary foundation for federal prosecutors to seek charges against both individuals. Because the offense involved the use of an explosive device, the case was prosecuted in the United States District Court, where there is no option for parole upon conviction. Silvio King entered into an agreement to cooperate with the prosecution, providing a detailed account of how Ashley had systematically influenced him over several months, playing on his personal vulnerabilities to guide him toward committing the act. He testified that on the morning of the incident, he had waited along Danny S. route and used a remote transmitter to detonate the device as the truck passed by, hoping to eliminate Danny from Ashley S. life. Ashley Haydt was indicted on multiple federal charges, including conspiracy, the malicious use of an explosive device, and concealing the commission of a felony. Her trial, delayed due to the challenges of the global coronavirus pandemic, took place in October of the year 2021. The prosecution presented a compelling case built on physical evidence, financial transactions, and extensive digital communications, demonstrating that Silvio had acted as her instrument. After a 4-day trial, the jury returned a verdict of guilty on all counts. Ashley was subsequently sentenced to 220 months in federal prison, while Silvio received a sentence of 9 years for his cooperation and role in the offense. This tragic case offers profound insights into human behavior and provides valuable lessons for the safety and well-being of our communities. First, it emphasizes the critical importance of paying attention to warning signs in interpersonal relationships. Extreme manipulation often begins with subtle behaviors, such as attempts to isolate an individual, constant portrayals of oneself as a victim, or encouraging others to harbor resentment against a third party. Recognizing these behavioral patterns early can prevent individuals from being drawn into dangerous situations. It is essential to maintain healthy boundaries and seek objective, professional guidance when navigating difficult life transitions, rather than relying on individuals who exhibit erratic or highly dramatic behavior. Furthermore, this case illustrates how modern law enforcement utilizes a combination of traditional investigative techniques and advanced technology to resolve complex crimes quickly. The successful resolution of this investigation was achieved through the rapid coordination between local police, federal agencies, and specialized forensic units. By analyzing the physical remains of the device, tracing purchase histories through digital transactions, and reconstructing communication timelines through mobile device forensics, investigators were able to build an undeniable case that withstood legal scrutiny. For communities everywhere, the story of Danny Brooks is a reminder of the power of resilience and the ultimate triumph of justice. Despite the immense challenges he faced, including surviving a highly dangerous event, Danny recovered from his physical injuries and rebuilt his life with the support of his family and his community. He married his partner, Christina, and undertook the legal process of adopting her child, creating a stable and loving environment for his family. The dedication of the investigating officers and the strength of the legal system ensured that those who sought to cause harm were held fully accountable, preserving the safety and peace of the community of Dothan, Alabama. The complex intersection of interpersonal relationships, emotional manipulation, and criminal intent often produces tragic outcomes that baffle both communities and investigators. In analyzing these cases, particularly those involving extreme measures like targeted violence, it is essential to explore the underlying motives that drive individuals to cross legal and moral boundaries. The primary motivation in many such occurrences is not a sudden lapse of reason, but rather a slow, calculated accumulation of resentment, rejection, and a desperate desire for control. When a romantic relationship dissolves, particularly one involving children, the custody battle can become a proxy war for personal vindication. For some, the legal system feels too slow, too neutral, or too unpredictable, prompting them to seek alternative, highly destructive avenues to assert their dominance. In these scenarios, the perpetrator often acts out of a combination of wounded pride, possessiveness, and a profound lack of empathy, viewing the other party not as a fellow parent or human being, but as an obstacle to be permanently removed. A frequent reason why these cases occur with disturbing regularity lies in the psychological phenomenon of manipulation by proxy. An individual harboring intense malice may not possess the technical skills, the courage, or the willingness to face the direct consequences of committing a violent act. Instead, they identify and groom a vulnerable third party to carry out the deed on their behalf. This grooming process is often highly systematic. The instigator seeks out someone who is emotionally impressionable, perhaps dealing with their own history of isolation, abuse, or low self-esteem, and who harbors a strong desire for acceptance or romantic connection. By sharing exaggerated or completely fabricated stories of victimhood, the instigator triggers the protective instincts of the proxy, gradually shifting the responsibility for their happiness and safety onto this unsuspecting individual. The proxy, believing they are acting as a heroic savior or earning the romantic affection of the instigator, is led down a path of radicalization where extreme violence is framed as a necessary and noble intervention. This insidious dynamic allows the true mastermind to maintain a comfortable distance, operating under the delusion that they can enjoy the benefits of the crime while remaining entirely shielded from culpability. In tracking down the perpetrators of such sophisticated crimes, law enforcement agencies rely on a combination of physical forensics, digital footprints, and psychological profiling. The physical evidence left behind at a crime scene is often the first critical piece of the puzzle. In cases involving explosive devices, the fragments of the device itself speak volumes about the maker. Forensic specialists can determine the exact type of materials used, such as galvanized metal pipes, specific types of gunpowder, and the mechanism used for ignition, such as model rocket motors and a 12-volt motorcycle battery. These components, while seemingly common, are actually highly specific when combined. Investigators immediately seek to trace the origin of these purchases, utilizing retail transaction records, credit card receipts, and surveillance footage from local hobby and hardware stores. The physical debris, when reconstructed, provides a signature of the builder, revealing their level of technical competence and pointing directly to the retail outlets where the components were acquired. Simultaneously, the digital footprint of the suspects provides the most damning evidence. Even when criminals attempt to employ digital hygiene by using temporary messaging applications designed to delete communications after a short period, They often underestimate the capabilities of modern digital forensics. Law enforcement officers can perform comprehensive extractions of mobile devices, retrieving not only active messages, but also metadata, deleted files, and structural remnants of communication. These digital extractions often reveal the timeline of the conspiracy, showing a clear shift from standard text messaging to alternative applications as the planning intensified. The geographic movements of the suspects are also scrutinized through cellular tower logs and mobile device location data, which can place a suspect near the crime scene or the victim's residence during key moments, such as the planting of a device in the early morning hours. This combination of physical evidence and digital communication effectively dismantles any constructed alibis, revealing the coordination between the instigator and the executor. The sophistication of the criminals in these cases is often a study in contradiction. On one hand, the construction of a remote detonated explosive device suggests a certain level of technical planning and coordination. On the other hand, the execution is frequently plagued by monumental blunders and logical loopholes. Conspirators often leave a blatant paper trail by purchasing critical components with personal credit cards, appearing clearly on high-definition retail surveillance cameras, and failing to account for the physical remnants of the device left behind at their own residences. Furthermore, the psychological pressure of the investigation almost inevitably causes the conspirators to turn on one another. The mastermind, attempting to distance themselves from the crime, may prematurely approach law enforcement to frame their accomplice as a rogue actor, unaware that this very action draws intense scrutiny toward their own involvement. The accomplice, realizing they have been used as a puppet and abandoned, quickly cooperates with prosecutors, providing the ultimate insider account of the conspiracy. This predictable collapse of the criminal partnership highlights the inherent flaws in their planning and ensures that justice is ultimately served. Preventing such tragic cases requires the community to draw profound life lessons regarding interpersonal relationships and emotional intelligence. One of the most critical lessons is the absolute necessity of paying attention to psychological red flags in relationships. When a partner exhibits extreme bitterness, refuses to accept the natural end of a relationship, or attempts to manipulate others by constant appeals to victimhood, these are signs of potential escalation. Healthy individuals resolve disputes through legal, mature, and transparent channels, respecting the boundaries of others. Society must also cultivate a deeper awareness of how manipulation by proxy operates, teaching individuals, especially those who are vulnerable or seeking connection, to recognize when they are being groomed to harbor hatred or commit harmful acts on behalf of another. By fostering a culture of open communication, emotional support, and respect for the rule of law, communities can identify and diffuse these toxic dynamics before they escalate into violence. For law enforcement, the speed with which such cases are solved can be significantly enhanced through several strategic practices. First, immediate and seamless multi-agency collaboration is paramount. When local police departments, county sheriff offices, and federal agencies like the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives pool their resources and specialized expertise, they can process evidence and run leads concurrently rather than sequentially. Second, rapid deployment of digital forensics is crucial. Securing consent or search warrants for electronic devices at Motfi, the very beginning of an investigation, allows detectives to capture volatile data before it can be deleted or altered. Finally, establishing a strong rapport avec hot community members and local businesses can drastically reduce the time needed to identify suspects, as store owners and employees often provide the vital clues that link physical evidence to specific purchasers. To understand the full depth of these dynamics, we must look closely at the events that unfolded in the quiet town of Dothan, Alabama. The story begins with a man named Danny Brooks, who was born in Dothan in September of the year 1974. Raised by parents who were deeply rooted in the community, with his mother working in the grocery business and his father serving the local parks and recreation department, Danny grew up with a strong work ethic and a commitment to his family. After completing his education, he built a career as a skilled mechanic and welder, a profession that required precision, patience, and a practical understanding of machinery. In the year 1998, Danny married a woman named Casey Shaw, and the couple welcomed a daughter into the world. As the young girl grew, her parents noticed she was lagging in certain developmental milestones, particularly in her speech. When medical professionals confirmed that their daughter had special needs, Danny and Casey embraced the challenge with dedication, ensuring she received the care and support necessary to thrive. 4 years later, Casey gave birth to their son, Zachary, completing their family. Despite their shared devotion to their children, the marriage between Danny and Casey eventually faced strain, leading to their divorce in the year 2004. In a testament to Danny's capability and commitment as a parent, he was awarded majority custody of both children. He structured his life to balance the demanding hours of his work with the intense responsibilities of raising a young son and a special needs daughter. Tragically, on Thanksgiving Day in the year 2005, the family was struck by an unexpected disaster. While driving to pick up the children, Casey was involved in a severe automobile accident and passed away at the scene. Danny, suddenly navigating the profound grief of his children while managing his own, redoubled his efforts. He handled the double role of mother and father with a quiet resilience that earned the deep respect of his family and neighbors, volunteering as a Cub Scouts den master when his son joined the organization in the 1st grade. It was through this involvement with the Cub Scouts in the year 2013 that Danny met a newcomer to the Dothan area, a woman named Nicole Haydt. Ashley had recently relocated from Pennsylvania, where she had grown up, moving to Alabama to build a relationship with her mother's side of the family. She had enrolled her sons in the same scout pack, and her sweet, positive attitude quickly caught Danny's attention. The two began dating, and for a long time, the relationship seemed to be a natural fit. Ashley brought energy and companionship into Danny's structured life, and they navigated the complexities of their respective families together. However, as the years progressed, their visions for the future began to diverge. Ashley strongly desired marriage, viewing it as a necessary step for her long-term happiness, while Danny, cautious from his past experiences and focused on his existing familial responsibilities, was not ready to take that step. By the year 2016, unable to find common ground, they ended their 3-year relationship. Shortly after the breakup, Ashley discovered she was pregnant, and their son, Lincoln, was born in June of the year 2017. Although the relationship between the parents was over, Danny made it clear that he intended to be a fully active, full-time father to his new son, refusing to accept a limited, every other weekend visitation schedule. This determination clashed directly with Ashley's desire for majority custody and control. The disagreement quickly escalated into a formal legal battle, with both hiring attorneys to represent their interests in court. As the custody dispute intensified throughout the summer and autumn of the year 2017, Danny tried to maintain his focus on his work and began a new, promising relationship with a woman named Christina, whom he had met while working at a manufacturing facility. Though they chose to take things slowly, Christina brought a renewed sense of happiness and stability to Danny's life, even as she navigated her own difficult divorce from an estranged husband who refused to sign the final papers. Meanwhile, Ashley's resentment over the breakup and the looming custody battle began to consume her. She had gained employment at the Wiregrass Rehabilitation Center in Dothan, where she worked alongside a man named Silvio Joseph King. Silvio, a 48-year-old man with a history of personal vulnerabilities and childhood trauma, quickly became a close friend to Ashley. Seeing his impressionable nature, Ashley began to use their daily interactions to share her grievances about Danny. She painted a picture of a relationship defined by emotional abuse, falsely portraying Danny as a threat to her well-being and the safety of her children. In text messages presented later in court, Ashley systematically villainized her ex-boyfriend, expressing intense fear of losing custody of her infant son, and repeatedly stating that her life would be significantly better if Danny were simply out of the picture. Silvio, harboring growing romantic feelings for Ashley and a strong desire to protect her, absorbed these stories completely. He began to assure her that he would do whatever it took to keep her and her children safe. Seeing his willingness to act, Ashley suggested they transition their conversations to Snapchat, a digital application where messages and photos disappear shortly after being viewed, in an attempt to obscure their planning. Over the course of several weeks, the conspiracy took a definitive and dangerous turn. When Silvio suggested he had connections who could resolve her issues, Ashley actively encouraged the idea. Silvio began to purchase the components necessary to construct a powerful pipe bomb, including galvanized metal pipes, black powder, ammunition projectiles designed to act as deadly shrapnel, a 12-volt motorcycle battery, and model rocket motors to serve as the remote ignition source. The lack of criminal sophistication was evident from the very beginning of their planning. Silvio went to a local hobbycraft store to purchase the specialized model rocket, motors, dressed in his recognizable mechanic S-shirt and glasses, and paid for the items using a credit card. High-definition security cameras at the store captured his face, his clothing, and his transaction clearly, creating an indelible link between the conspirators and the physical bomb components. Once the device was assembled, Silvio sent a photograph of the pipe bomb to Ashley. Rather than expressing horror or urging him to stop, Ashley responded coldly, asking him why he did not simply use a rifle to shoot Danny instead. Despite this suggestion, the plan to use the explosive device proceeded. On the afternoon of October 22, 2017, Ashley provided Silvio with Danny's residential address, setting the final stage for the attack. In the early morning hours of Monday, October 23, 2017, Silvio drove to Danny's residence under the cover of darkness. Approaching Danny's white GMC Company pickup truck, which was parked outside the house, Silvio pulled the handle of the rear driver's side door and found it unlocked. He carefully placed the constructed pipe bomb on the back floorboard directly behind the driver's seat, positioning it so that the explosion would target the driver's side. He then sent a message to Ashley, confirming that the device was in position and ready. Silvio then drove to a strategic location on South Park Avenue, positioned himself along Danny S.'s normal morning commute route, and waited with the remote detonator in hand. For Danny Brooks, that Monday morning began like any other. After getting ready for work and saying goodbye to Christina, he left his house to begin his commute. His task for the day was to pick up a couple of co-workers and some welding equipment for a job, a drive that typically took about 15 to 20 minutes. As Danny drove down the familiar road, he passed a southbound car. A split second later, a massive explosion rocked the interior of his truck. The blast was deafening, leaving a severe ringing in his ears and leaving him completely disoriented. The cabin of the truck filled with the smell of burnt lighter fluid and smoke. In a state of shock, Danny tried to push his door open, but the force of the blast had warped the metal, trapping him inside. Realizing the windows had been completely blown out, he managed to scramble and flag down a passing motorist. The Good Samaritan quickly stopped, ran to the damaged vehicle, and managed to force the driver's door open from the outside, helping Danny escape the smoking cabin. As Danny stood up on the side of the road, he noticed a significant amount of blood covering the driver's seat. Reaching around to his back, his hand came away covered in blood. The motorist immediately called 911, reporting that an individual on the side of the road had survived an explosion in his truck and was bleeding heavily from his back. Paramedics arrived swiftly, assessing Danny's injuries, which included deep lacerations and severe burns on his left side, hip, and lower back, where the shrapnel had penetrated his body. He was rushed to a nearby hospital, where surgeons worked diligently to remove the metal fragments and secure his wounds. At the scene of the explosion, investigators from the Dothan Police Department and the Houston County Sheriff's Office immediately recognized the gravity of the situation. The road was littered with shattered glass, and a large hole was visible in the driver's seat, showing where the force of the blast had ripped through the metal floorboard and the seat itself. Peering into the back of the truck, detectives immediately spotted exposed wiring and what appeared to be an electronic circuit board lying on the floor. Realizing the extreme danger of a secondary explosive device, the scene was immediately secured, the road was closed to the public, and the local bomb squad, along with specialized agents from the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, was called in to take control of the scene. As bomb technicians meticulously cleared the vehicle, they confirmed there were no secondary devices. They began to recover highly specific physical evidence, including fragments of galvanized metal pipe, black powder residue, multiple ammunition projectiles, a 12-volt motorcycle battery, and the distinctive wiring of model rocket motors. The presence of these items confirmed that Danny had been the target of a deliberate, remote-detonated pipe bomb. The investigation immediately focused on identifying who would possess the motive and the capability to commit such an act. At the hospital, detectives questioned Danny, who was still recovering from surgery. When asked if anyone harbored enough anger toward him to attempt his murder, Danny struggled to find an answer, eventually noting that the only active conflict in his life was the custody dispute with his ex-girlfriend, Nicole Haydt. However, he expressed doubt that she could be involved in something so extreme. The following day, an agent from the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives visited Ashley at her workplace to discuss her relationship with Danny. Ashley appeared cooperative and calm, explaining that their legal battle was being handled entirely by their respective attorneys. She claimed she had no knowledge of who could have targeted Danny and readily consented to a forensic download of her mobile phone. Because she had shifted her sensitive communications with Silvio to Snapchat, the initial extraction of her phone did not reveal any immediate evidence of a conspiracy, and she was temporarily cleared as a suspect. Detectives then turned their attention to other potential leads, including Christina S.'s estranged husband. Christina had shared that her ex-husband had been highly abusive and was extremely unhappy about her new relationship with Danny. She provided text messages that gave investigators reasonable suspicion to secure a search warrant for his residence in Sampson, Alabama. However, a thorough search of his home and a forensic analysis of his cell phone records quickly established that his phone was miles away from the scene of the bombing at the time of the explosion. His alibi was verified, and he was cleared of any involvement. With their primary leads exhausted, investigators focused intensely on tracing the physical components of the bomb. Forensic analysts confirmed that the unique wiring belonged to model rocket motors sold at Hobby Lobby stores. Agents immediately visited the local Hobby Lobby and began reviewing transaction records and security footage. They quickly identified a transaction where a Caucasian male wearing a Mechanic S shirt, glasses, and a black hat had purchased the exact rocket motors. The suspect had made the critical error of paying with a credit card. Although the transaction record only displayed a card number, investigators immediately issued a subpoena to the bank to identify the account holder. Recognizing that the perpetrator was still at large and represented an ongoing threat, law enforcement placed Danny under continuous security detail as he was discharged from the hospital. The atmosphere of fear and uncertainty took a heavy toll on Danny and his family, who were left wondering if another attack was imminent. However, 3 days after the bombing, a dramatic breakthrough occurred. A local attorney contacted the Houston County Sheriff, stating that he had a client who wished to provide critical information regarding the bombing. The client was none other than Ashley Haydt. Sensing that the investigation was closing in and desperate to distance herself from the crime, Ashley had decided to orchestrate a ruse. In the attorney's office, she admitted to investigators that she knew Vekep, who had built and planted the bomb. She claimed that her co-worker at the Wiregrass Rehabilitation Center, Silvio King, had confessed to the crime. She told detectives that Silvio was infatuated with her and had taken her complaints about Danny too seriously, acting entirely on his own initiative to protect her and her children. When investigators showed her the security photos from Hobby Lobby, she quickly confirmed Silvio's identity, pretending to be a shocked bystander who was only now realizing the extent of her co-worker's actions. However, Ashley's attempt to play the innocent informant immediately raised red flags. Detectives questioned why she had failed to mention Silvio during her initial interview just 2 days prior, and why she had recently deleted the Snapchat application from her phone. Her calculated attempt to place all the blame on Silvio while presenting herself as a victim of his unsolicited devotion only increased the investigators' suspicions. Before they could arrest Silvio, however, another bizarre development occurred. The local 911 dispatch received a panicked call from Silvio King. He claimed that he had discovered a threatening note inside his vehicle that read, "Your next boom," and asserted that he was about to be blown up. Realizing that Silvio was the primary suspect in the bombing, and that this was likely a desperate hoax designed to frame himself as a victim rather than the perpetrator, dispatchers kept him on the line while officers rushed to his location. To ensure public safety in the event that a real secondary device existed, officers directed Silvio to step away from his vehicle. He was transported to a local hospital, claiming he felt faint, which allowed investigators to secure his consent to search his apartment and his vehicle. The subsequent search of Silvio's residence on 6th Avenue in Dothan yielded an overwhelming amount of evidence. Detectives recovered gunpowder, matching galvanized pipe fragments, ammunition projectiles, wiring, and components of a remote detonator that perfectly matched the debris recovered from Danny S.'s truck. Faced with this undeniable physical evidence and the security footage from Hobby Lobby, Silvio realized his position was indefensible. During his interrogation, he confessed to building and planting the bomb, detailing how he had placed it in the truck and waited along South Park Avenue to detonate it as Danny drove past. Although Silvio initially attempted to protect Ashley by refusing to implicate her directly, stating that he could not live with himself if he caused her children to be without their mother, his silence was short-lived. The forensic extraction of his mobile phone, combined with the detailed recovery of their Snapchat history, revealed the true nature of their relationship. The messages showed a clear and deliberate pattern of manipulation. Ashley had systematically exploited Silvio's vulnerabilities, using him as a puppet to carry out her desire to eliminate Danny. When Silvio had sent her a photo of the completed bomb, her cold response questioning why he did not simply shoot, Danny revealed her active participation in the conspiracy. Furthermore, after Silvio's arrest, Ashley had immediately severed all communication vacapitahat him, leaving him to face the consequences alone. Realizing he had been used and abandoned, Silvio agreed to cooperate fully with federal prosecutors. Because the use of an explosive device constituted a federal offense, the case was moved to the United States District Court for the Middle District of Alabama. In October of the year 2020, Silvio Joseph King pleaded guilty to conspiracy and the malicious use of an explosive device. He was subsequently sentenced to 9 years, which amounted to 108 months, in federal prison with no opportunity for parole. Ashley Nicole Haydt was indicted on charges of conspiracy, malicious use of an explosive device, and misprision of a felony. In October of the year 2021, Ashley's case went to trial. Over the course of a 4-day trial, federal prosecutors, led by Assistant United States Attorneys Brandon Bates and Chelsea Phillips, presented a mountain of physical and digital evidence. Silvio King took the stand as the star witness, detailing Ashley's role as the mastermind who had provided him with Danny's address, groomed him to commit the violence, and encouraged the elimination of her ex-boyfriend. In a particularly powerful moment during the trial, the prosecutor asked Silvio if Danny Brooks was present in the courtroom. Silvio, who had never actually met or seen the man he had tried to kill, replied that he did not know, highlighting the cold, impersonal nature of the crime, and demonstrating that, but for Ashley's manipulation, this act of violence never would have occurred. Although Ashley's defense attorneys argued that Silvio had acted entirely on his own out of an obsessive infatuation, and that Ashley had no knowledge of his plans, the jury was not convinced. After deliberate consideration, the jury found Ashley Haydt guilty on all federal charges. On April 12, the year 2022, United States District Judge R. Austin Huffaker, Jr. sentenced her to 220 months in federal prison, to be followed by 3 years of supervised release. Under the federal system, her sentence carries no possibility of parole, ensuring she will serve the entirety of her term. This tragic case ended with the victory of justice, highlighting the resilience of Danny Brooks and the structural integrity of the legal system. Danny made a full recovery from his physical injuries and, alongside his wife Christina, has built a stable, happy life, continuing to care for his children and finalizing the adoption process for his youngest son. The investigative forces, through their collaborative efforts, meticulous forensic analysis, and rapid digital investigation, successfully dismantled a complex conspiracy, ensuring that both the puppet and the puppet master were held fully accountable under the law. On a quiet Monday morning on October 23, 2017, the peaceful town of Dothan, Alabama, was shaken by an event that seemed entirely out of place for its serene, close-knit community. For a local mechanic named Danny Brooks, the day began like any other, defined by the familiar routines of preparing for a standard shift, organizing equipment, and preparing to assist his co-workers. He had recently entered a promising new phase of his life, sharing a home with his supportive partner, Christina, and managing the responsibilities of a demanding professional role. His commute was expected to be a brief 15-minute drive along a familiar route, a simple transition from the comfort of his home to the demands of his workday. Yet, in a single, terrifying moment, this routine journey was violently interrupted when a sudden, loud detonation occurred within his utility vehicle, instantly shattering the windows, filling the cabin with smoke, and leaving him disoriented and struggling to escape